There's probably something in your life that you feel that you're supposed to do, but all your shit from the past, your programming, things that people have told you who are like, you can never do this or should never do this, or you're dumb or you have a learning disability or whatever is there. But the resistance is a sign that you must do it. You must do it because it is beyond you. What you think you're not good at, what the world has told you from the outside and you suck at, that actually might be your greatest gift. And I encourage you to lean into it, because it doesn't make any sense that I'm a writer. It doesn't. And magic doesn't make sense. And so if you have resistance, there's a huge gift on the other side. Show up for it, do it, because this is just one of those examples.
Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another beautiful episode of Happiness from Within. I am beyond ecstatic for today's guest. Today we have Deidre, and she's going to be sharing her amazing journey. And she's going to be giving you a lot of insights of how you can come out of the darkness and into the light. So I actually have her here on the line. How are you today?
I'm so good.
So let's go ahead and jump right in. What does happiness from within mean to you?
Well, I really love this because, so many of us are operating from the outside in, right? It's like, oh, outside in, how do I show up? This is going to make me happy. So it's like this external reference point. So happiness from within is really about taking the time to be internal and ask yourself, what is happiness? What's actually going to make you happy? And just a little story. I was like, Mom, Dad, Tyler, John, like, come down and see what I can do. I was like, probably like 10 years old or something, or 9. I was so excited to have my whole family come outside and watch me do a skip rope, like the crossover and skipping. And so I was always like, wanted everyone to know when I learned something new. And I remember gathering in our backyard, and there was a half circle around me, my 2 brothers, my mom and dad, and I started skipping, and my heart was beating. I was so excited, Janet, to like show them what I could do. I was so happy. I was so excited. And I was skipping. And then I went to do the crossover, and I messed up. And I would look at them and I'm like, wait, didn't count, try again. And I just kept going. I kept messing up over and over again. Eventually, my brothers were like, oh, Dee, like, what are you doing? They left. My parents left. I lost my audience. I was so excited to share that with them because it made me happy. What happened over time, though, was I continued to lose my audience. I continued to lose the audience when I was doing things that I was really excited about. So as I started to grow up, I started to stop going from the inside out, and I started to take external cues, so outside in living, which led to a life of living a dual life, among other things that led me to completely changing my life years ago, because I realized I wasn't living my life. I was living someone else's, the person that I thought I should be. And so I think a lot of people are doing that right now, but they don't even know it because it's been programmed as a way, well, this is going to bring me happiness. But when we get there and we reach these milestones, we might be asking ourselves the question, is this really it? And that's what happened in my life. So happiness from within is remembering what really brings you happiness, continuing to show up as that, regardless of what everyone else thinks or responds. And that is how we access our happiness.
Wow, I really love that. That's beautiful. Next question for you is, what is it that lights your soul on fire?
Well, my favorite thing in the world, there's a few different things. Number one, I love entertaining people. I've always been an entertainer. I'm the youngest of 3, so I love making people laugh and smile and entertaining. The next thing is I love helping people step into their purpose and create an impact in the world. And then the third piece is I really love helping people transform trauma into their greatest gifts for humanity. And that's what my book's about, Turn Your Light On. That's what my signature program's about. It's really about, as we were talking, turning the darkness into light, because it actually is the pathway to your greatest gifts for humanity. So I love entertaining, I love helping people get what they want and then transforming their deepest wounds and the stuff that's in their closet that they're like, I don't want to go there. Like opening up the closet and being like, it's not so scary. Like, let's just take out a couple things. Okay, cool. Let's process it. Oh, great. There's a gift here. Oh, wow. This is the thing that you've been waiting for. We're gonna expand this into your reality. So those are the main things that light me up. And then of course, like family and animals and traveling, but those are the core pieces for sure.
I really appreciate you sharing that because a lot of people don't know what lights their soul on fire. And I can tell just looking into your eyes and the way that you move your body that you're very passionate about what you do. And so yeah, congratulations for that. That's amazing. So let's go a little bit deeper if you don't mind. Take us
Absolutely.
back. Where did you grow up? How did your spiritual journey begin?
I grew up in Kamloops, BC, Canada, a small town. Not a lot of people live there. And my spiritual journey, I could say it started as a young kid. I was always very sensitive. I grew up in a family where someone very close to me had an addiction, and so when we grow up with someone who has an addiction, we can become very sensitive and very aware of other people's needs. So at a young age, I started to live a bit of a dual life, as I mentioned earlier, of being really good at being the happy-go-lucky kid, but then also being really tuned into what's going on with other people and what they're feeling, like that empath, like really knowing. And I didn't fully wake up to my full gifts until I was 20. But when I did, I remember driving one day. There were a series of events that happened. And one of them, I was driving one day and I started hearing people's thoughts. The trees started talking to me, birds started talking to me. I started having random people on the street come and give me a message from an angel or from a spirit or whatever. And I thought I was going totally crazy, Janet. And I was in a relationship at the time. It ended up being the person I married, and he was the opposite of all this spiritual stuff. So it wasn't really a safe place to express what was going on. But yeah, everything started showing up really powerfully when I was 20, and I wasn't ready for it. I wanted to shut it off. And I tried to, but it just kept coming stronger and stronger and stronger. And now this is one of the things that I help people access within themselves. So it was, I remember this one week, I woke up 3 or 4 days in a row at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'd have a whisper in my ear with a message. And then I remember walking my dog each of those days and something bizarre would happen. And I remember this one day, this homeless person came up to me and gave me the same message that I woke up with that morning. And so all of these synchronicities happened. And it wasn't until I left my marriage and really left behind the life that I created that never really felt like my own, that I was able to stabilize in my gifts. Because I feel like they were coming on so strong as a way for me to acknowledge them and as a way for me to create a life that was in alignment with that rather than denying who I really am. And that's something that I think a lot of us do.
Wow, that's really deep. Thank you for sharing that. So I would love to hear if you can share with the audience anything you feel comfortable sharing. So I know you're helping people with trauma, so you have obviously gone through a lot. And I remember in your Instagram stories you were sharing briefly, but if you don't mind taking us back, just anywhere you feel in your heart, just I know you were going through some health issues. I think anxiety and depression, and you've overcome a lot. But just you know, what was it that you went through, and how did you begin to take yourself out of that situation and then the person that you are now?
Yeah, well, the thing is with trauma, and I have a very different perspective than most people, it's actually very controversial. Because I believe that your greatest traumas or your greatest access point to your gifts. I don't believe you have to be in therapy for 10 years, or I don't believe in that model because I've had so many profound shifts in my own life and the people that I've supported that I'm like, there's an easier way. It doesn't have to be so hard. So when it comes to trauma, I mean, trauma is our soul school. So I look at it differently. I think it's like this fun thing that we get to investigate, but when we're in it, it can feel very not great. So bringing it back to a trauma, when I was 19 years old, I was spending some time with a gentleman. And I remember one day going to spend time with him, and my intention that evening was to break up with him. And just because like things weren't feeling quite right, and my stomach was upset that morning, things didn't quite feel right. But in my mind, I was like, no, I have to have a conversation with this guy, that I can't see him anymore because it just something was feeling off. And so we got together that evening and we drove around, and I was trying to have the conversation with him, didn't really happen. And I went to drop him off at his home. And I talk a little bit about this in my TEDx on like some significant trauma that I've had, and I educate more on it. And so I remember going to drop him off, and he invited me inside. And my whole body shut down, that feeling where everything gets really tense and contracted. And I remember looking at him, he's smiling, he's charming, he's good looking, he's saying all the right things. Just come in for 5 minutes, no big deal. And I was like, nothing in the physical world felt off. Like nothing was off as far as like logical things, right? And so going back to happiness from within, a lot of the time when things externally look like they should, or we think that they should, we're like, oh, well, this is the path, when it's really not, because something's not right on the inside. So I remember taking my seatbelt off. It was really slowly. Everything was in slow motion, getting out of my car and walking towards the door of his house. And it was like one foot in front of the other, felt like I had bricks in my legs and like my body was shutting down. But I kept going because, again, nothing from the outside in seemed off, right? I was operating from the outside. No one taught me how to access my intuition, right? So I walk in the door, and within about 5 minutes of being inside, I was pinned down by this guy, and I blacked out, and he raped me. And the last thing I remember him saying to me was, watch you go tell your friends I raped you, at the end. And I remember being in this space of, what even just happened? Like, I wasn't drinking alcohol. Like, how did this happen? I blacked out with trauma. Just like animals, when we experience something that's so overwhelming, what can happen is we'll actually black out as a way to protect ourselves. And so that night, I betrayed myself because I didn't know how to listen to myself, right? I didn't know how to listen to myself, but that actually needed to happen to me so that I could move through multiple other traumas that were created as a result of that trauma, so that I can serve the people that I serve today. So after that happened, I asked myself the question, did this really happen? Did I do this to myself? And of course, that statement, watch you go, you tell your friends, very manipulative thing to say. And for the next, let's say, 5 or so years, I started to cover up my body. Like, I had a lot of body shame. I had a really hard time looking men in the eyes. I just had a lot of stuff going on internally, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about what happened. And so I carried that shame, that trauma, that disconnection from myself and pain in my body for years. And so when I was in school, my last year of university in a different province in Calgary, I ended up bumping into this guy who was in my university. And I started to experience PTSD, and I'd run to the washroom and throw up because I just was experiencing extreme PTSD. And I had to go on a medication for a few months just to help me sleep and calm my body. And long story short, as many of us do when we experience a trauma, as soon as it's on our face, we are like, it's not a problem anymore, right? So that happened the first time. It's not a problem anymore. I'm fine. I'm good. Like, we always downplay what happens to us. This happens a lot with people who go to war or experience big traumas. And so after the PTSD was gone, he was no longer, I was out of the program. I was like, I'm good. And then I went to Landmark, and they get you to call people from your past. And so I called him and acknowledged it. I thought I was like in the empowerment state, and I was good. I was over it. But it wasn't until I actually really learned what I do now, which is completing traumas, and they can be completed in as little as 5 to 10 minutes, that I realized that there were all these stages of avoidance, denial, me betraying myself over and over again because of that core trauma. that how deeply it was and how much it was affecting me. But the biggest, so when I completed the trauma, I was like, I saw the greatest gifts. And I was like, okay, I'm good, I'm whole, I'm complete. This isn't impacting the way I feel anymore. But the biggest turning point for me in regards to my biggest trauma, or one of my biggest traumas, was I was working at a yoga studio with my past business. I used to own a yoga business, and this woman came up to me, and she actually was just raped actually by someone who is someone who worked at this university. And she was telling me about how he quit working at the university and all this stuff. And I had this mama bear energy come up within me. And I was like, that's not enough. Like, you need to report this guy. I was like, because there's no way that you're not the only one. And I said, you know, there's probably other women. And if there's nothing on his record, then, you know, what are we doing here? Right. And this mama bear energy came up and I said that. And then I realized I never reported what happened to me a decade ago. And that took me down the path of reporting the trauma, going through the whole thing. Now it's on his record that he's been accused of that in the details. And I realized a lot of things that are wrong with the system. I realized that I had to do that for myself. And I had to do that for him too, because the thing is, if someone's out there doing anything that's really violent, they've had that done to themselves in another way. So it's actually like we have a moral responsibility to show up and take action in certain areas. And are we supposed to go through these traumas to access our greatest gifts? Absolutely, but also to put an end to trauma and put an end to a lot of the things that are going on. We have to show up and do things that maybe we don't want to do because there's other people involved. So, I mean, that's a long story with one trauma, but when I was able to heal that on a deep level through the work that I do now, I realized that I had over a decade of pain and suffering, that if I had the courage and the knowing and the understanding to take action sooner, I wouldn't have had to go through that.
Wow. I couldn't help but my tears. That was so deep. Thank you for sharing that. I know that a lot of women listening to this can really relate. 'Cause I think 1 in every 3 people have gone through something traumatically. It's a worldwide thing, you know, so I just really appreciate you sharing that. I know it's very, very deep. My next question for you is, I really loved you were sharing something else on your Instagram stories about, I'd like to talk about, because, you know, a lot of us have money blocks, right? And you were talking about like putting the brakes, like it's not about the money. And I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing like maybe one of your tactics of one little step somebody could take to start changing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just in conversation with my friend, actually. I'm here in Mexico, and we were just talking about this last night, so I love it. We're talking about like business. So a couple of the things that I help people with, just for perspective with anyone who's listening that doesn't know my work, is I help people heal, I help people integrate, change, activate their greatest gifts and make a bigger impact. And there's business parts that are attached in there, right? Like operations of having a business, a successful business, so that you can sustain your message. So one of the things I was in conversations with my friend about the other day was, we're talking about business because we're both business owners. I've been in business for 10 years. She's been in business for longer than that. And there's a lot of people who have money blocks. And I used to have money blocks. My first business that I had, I was working like almost every single day. And I was on a hamster wheel. I was go, go, go. And I wasn't making 6 figures yet, but I was working harder probably than anyone I know. And what I identified when I was going through my own shift, my own aha moments, was I realized my family dynamics. So I realized that, okay, I grew up in a family that's mainly male dominant, Italian background. And in my family, women weren't really taken seriously. Like, my mom is the brains of my parents' business, but she's not really taken seriously, although she's like the brains of it. You know what I mean? So it's funny how in my culture, that, you know, my family dynamics or system, it's very much like praising the men, and the women aren't really taken seriously. So growing up, especially as like the youngest of 3, and I have 2 older brothers, I wasn't really taken seriously either, right? And so as I was, you know, building my business and, you know, doing my things, I would have a lot of money blocks with investing in myself, because I wasn't making the kind of money that I wanted to, but also I didn't feel worthy of investing and I didn't fully trust myself. And so how do we build more self-trust? How do we create more wealth? How do we create more confidence? It's actually by investing in ourselves, which sounds kind of, doesn't make sense, right? But I realized I had this moment where there's a line that I wrote down is in a course around money I took like probably 7 years ago. And it's like, being a woman means, right? So it's like there's all of these programming that we can kind of pull from. Being a woman means, and then I think I wrote, you have to work hard or you have to like, not speak up. There were all these limiting beliefs that came up. And then I had one that came around money. And I was like, wow, so I don't think that I can make six figures. This was like 5 years ago. I don't think I can make six figures because I'm a woman. And I don't think I'm being taken seriously. And there were a couple other things that came to the surface. So as soon as we become aware of some of the programming, we can just stop and say, okay, well, if I didn't want to feel that way, what would the reality that I want to have? And then what I did, Janet, which was a game changer for me, I wonder if I still have it in my phone. It's a possibility. I do. I've had this on my phone for 5 years. Okay. And I've upgraded my phone, but of course, all the programming goes over to one phone to the other. It says, hold on. I am a powerful woman with massive work to do in the world, and I am highly compensated. I put this in my phone my first year of starting this business, and I did six figures in my first year because I told myself every single time I was in scarcity mindset, every single time I didn't want to do the thing, whatever that looked like, investing in myself, believing in myself, asking for money, this would come up on my phone 3 times a day. So that alone is huge, but becoming aware of the programming and then choosing what you want instead, because everything's a choice. And then getting excited about that and being in the energy of that. There was one more thing that I wanted to say, and then also clearing the karma around it. So a lot of the time with money, and I'm writing about this in my book right now, about clearing karma, is something that's happened from the past that we're bringing into the now, essentially, if we simplify it. And so with money, in order to clear your energy around money blocks, if you're not investing in yourself, if you're not making the kind of money that you want, all of that, you need to ask yourself some questions. And one of them that I find really helpful in some of the processing that I do with people and myself when I'm moving up against my blocks is, what is something that you've done with money or any area of your life that you wish you had done differently? What's one thing? Okay. And then you think about it, you're like, well, I wish I showed up more powerfully for that. I wish I didn't invest in that, whatever the thing is. And then you just acknowledge it. So you're acknowledging something that you've done in the past that you wish you had done differently. And then you look at the impact. How has this impacted me and others? Well, it impacted me because I wasn't ready for it. I didn't invest my time, energy, whatever in it, whatever the thing is, whatever the impact was. And then from there, what will you do differently moving forward? Those 3 questions, acknowledging the past, the impact. So it's bringing sometimes the unconscious to be more conscious, or the subconscious. So you can see what you're dealing with. And then it's the action of what I'm going to do moving forward, where you can start to actually move that forward. And that clears the karma, it clears the energy around money. Another thing, I know I'm sharing a lot. Is it okay if I share one more thing on money?
Please. No, this is so deep. I love it. I love it.
I'm actually going to create a course on money. It's one of the many things that I'm going to do because it's so important, right? Like if I didn't clear this, who knows where I would still kind of be in money, and it can be very frustrating. The next thing is, one of the things that I did on the way to Mexico, and I've never done this before, Janet, is I bought a first class ticket here for flying. And I've never done that before. My family's successful in all of those things and in business, but I've always had the mentality growing up of, be modest, don't spend money where you don't need to. And it's like, it's a plane ticket, right? Like who needs to do that, right? But for me, it was like a significant amount more, like probably double the plane price. But I was like, I know like this upcoming year, I have some really big financial goals. I'm like, well, if I'm going to be in the energy of those financial goals, I need to treat myself like I'm already there. So the next level of like understanding the energetics around money and moving through blocks is investing in yourself like you're already there. And I'm not saying going crazy, but doing things where you're like, I'm already there. And so for me, it was buying a first class ticket because I've never done that before. So those are a few things. I could go on for days about it. Those are a few key pieces for sure.
Wow.
Oh, and this is one more piece.
Please,
Every
please.
single time I invest in something, every single time I have a rule, and I tell this to the universe, so the universe listens, right? Because when we say something, the universe listens. It just does, whether it's what you don't want, how much money you don't have, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you more of what you're telling me. I'm going to give you more of that. So for me, every single time I invest in something and I pay, like whether it's a $10,000 course or recently it was a $40,000 program, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, we're doing it. Is I tell myself, I'm making this back times 10. I have a rule that everything I invest in, I make it back times 10 within the next year or within the next 3 years. I'm making this back times 10. If we were to have some sort of investment that you were to put money into a bank and you knew because you are claiming it, you're owning it, you're saying it, that I'm going to make this back times 10, well, but if you're in scarcity mindset and you don't think that you will, well, you're probably not actually going to show up for it or do the work or believe. And then you get what you believe.
Wow. I love your perspective. I've just never heard of it from that angle. It's really, really powerful, fascinating. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Wow.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me go off and off because I love teaching and talking. So
Oh, that's absolutely. This is all you. This is all you. So, so my next question for you, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your programs. Just going a little bit into trauma, with your methods that you teach. Would you say it's a matter of like changing the programming, the patterns that one has subconsciously in their brain? Like, I know it's so much more than that, but I'm just really curious to learn a little bit more about that.
well, I have my program, my Turn Your Light On program. So I have a Turn Your Light On program. I have a Turn Your Light On experience, which is very like, it's more of a waking up to who you are. And then the program's more about transforming past trauma into your greatest gifts. And then same with the book. But mainly what it is it's about setting you up, first of all, in the program for releasing what you think is really going on. Okay. So we just talked a little bit about money as an example, right? So a lot of people are like, well, I don't have the money. So how do I get this? Or I can't. There's all of these things that are there that people actually think the problem is. So the problem usually isn't the problem. Okay. And so I say this because a lot of people, myself included, sometimes I'm definitely not perfect. I'm working on all these things just like everyone else, is we can attach ourselves to the problem is this, right? And so we have blinders on to what's actually going on. So first part of like the work is actually identifying what the problem really is, right? And it's from going from the inside out, not the outside in. So anything that is outside of you is not the problem, right? People, for example, we'll just talk about business for a second. People will say, oh, the pandemic happened, so my business suffered and I wasn't able to do X, Y, Z. And those are all relevant things that most people will say from the outside in because it makes logical sense. But from the inside out, it doesn't make sense because you're a capable human who can do anything. And everyone that was in my program last year, despite the pandemic for business, had their biggest financial year. And some of them were brick and mortar businesses. So I just wanted to give that framework for a second because anything that is outside in is not actually the problem. So it's about going inside out. So we do that, reframe that, understanding that, going within in the beginning of the program. And then it's really about understanding your response to what's going on versus what's actually going on. So for example, if let's talk about wells. I have a water bottle here and I have a mug here. So if you're at this well right now, Janet, and this is the well that you're at, okay? You have all these gifts, you have all these great things going on, and you drink from the well and you like the coffee, okay? This is coffee. And so you've been here for a long time. But then there's a guide that comes along, we'll say it's me or somebody else, and they're like, hey, like there's another well, this is water, okay? We'll say it's something else magical. It could be your goals, it could be your dreams, it could be that vision of yourself that you've had of who you are and who you're meant to be. And they're coming around, they're talking about this next well, right? And so you're like, whoa, it exists, right? But this well's been pretty good to you. And potentially from the outside in, you know, people looking at you, you're at a pretty good place. Other people want what you have, but you know that this is kind of like this coffee is not really what I want anymore. I want to go to the next well. So what happens on this journey of doing the deeper work within business, you know, healing, evolution, whatever it is, and also in the program, is it's about starting to believe that this well fully exists, seeing it just like you would something that's right in front of you, and then starting to go on that journey. So as a guide, I'm like your tour guide. I'm like, okay, this is what you need in your backpack. When we get to this point, this is what's going to come up for you. You're going to feel exhausted. You're going to want to quit. You're going to want to run back to your old well, which could be your excuses, which could be your trauma, which could be your default settings, which may already be some of your strengths, but your biggest strengths are also your biggest weaknesses. It could be your logical mind of wanting to figure things out and not knowing the next step. The thing is, with when we're going from one well to another, the next well is always a lot further than you going to the well that you're at. So it's about believing in yourself. It's about knowing what's coming. It's about knowing what your triggers are, your default settings, your core programming, and then also reminding you of where you're going. So the program itself, with moving through trauma and awakening your greatest gifts, it's about doing the inner work, getting people ready with what they need in their backpack as tools. So that they're not focusing on things that aren't actually the problem. Do you know what I mean? And then I'm guiding them on the journey, and it's a lot of fun. It's like being on a party bus, going where you want to go and having a good time, but everyone's on the journey together. So it's like, you know, okay, at some point you're going to be like, are we there yet? And I'm going to be like, no, we're not there yet. You know, you have this much time left. So it's a journey. And it is a reprogramming, absolutely, but it's more about an understanding and actually looking at, is there really a problem here? Or are you looking outside of yourself? So it's about going inside out. We work on intuition, we work on understanding, we work on connecting with your highest self and collapsing timelines, so that when you can connect with your highest self, you are in the light and you understand things from a whole different perspective. And then you naturally are taking those traumas, those things from the past, and transforming them into your greatest gifts because it's so obvious.
Wow. That's transformational. Wow. I'm literally like, my body is just like tingling. It's just like, wow, that's really deep. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just I would love to, for the audience, I'd love for you to share a little bit. I know you shared briefly about your offers. And just for time's sake, I know we're coming up to the time, but yeah, do you offer one-on-one coaching, group coaching? What is it that your offers?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I have my Turn Your Light On program. It's a coaching program that's a proven system that I've been developing for, we'll say, the last decade of my own stuff. It's like working with shamans, studying this work, being in healing, coaching, all of those things are really infused into this 8-week program. And so that's a really powerful program that I run. And then I have my book coming out. My book's going to be coming out in the new year, but we're doing pre-orders in December. And it's called Turn Your Light On, Transform Your trauma into your greatest gifts. And my goal really with creating this book is to support as many people as possible. And there's exercises in there. It does quite a bit of work without actually being in the program. And then on top of that, I do certification program. I have a certification program for transformational leaders to give them the tools and the frameworks that I've used in my business over the past 5 years. And then I support impact-driven entrepreneurs to actually expand their message in the world, make a bigger impact, and create a sustainable online business of 6 to 7 plus figures a year. And so those are some of the offerings. The thing that I'm most excited about right now is the book and the Turn Your Light On program. They are truly transformational. We've had about 77 people go through the program in the last 10 months. And we've had actually seminar leaders and people who are very well known say it's the most powerful program they've ever taken. It's a life-changing program. And it's so beautiful to have people who are masters in their own domain of healing, of coaching, say that they wish that they had this program 10 years ago. So it's really about the embodiment work. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I've done it, and I've probably taught it in the past, where it's like you learn something intellectually, but you're not actually getting the change in your life. This is the opposite. It's taking that and embodying it into your physical beingness so that you can't help but to show up as who you're meant to be, rather than being in that shelf health, that, the mind of knowing what to do, but being frustrated that you're not doing it. So most people come to me or find my work, Janet, when they've done all the other things, and all of a sudden someone recommends Deidre, and they're like, who is this chick? And they come to me, and through my programs or working one-on-one, they're like, wow, like now the change has happened. And so I create change really quickly, and it's permanent. So that's maybe the difference between what I do and what some other people are doing.
That's really fascinating. When does your book come out again?
It comes out in January, but we're doing the pre-sale will start probably mid-December.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure to put the link for that below. I'll get that from you, and definitely help you to promote that. I'm really excited for you. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm like, it's so crazy. Can I share a little story? Do we have a moment?
Of course, please. Yeah.
Okay. So I grew up, and this is a really powerful story for me, and I think it will resonate with whoever is listening or watching right now. Is I grew up with the mindset, with the belief system that I have a learning disability, that I'm not smart. Okay. And so growing up, I had to get extra help reading and writing in English, even though it's my first language. And I'm dyslexic. And so growing up, even though English was my first language, English was my hardest class. My teachers would mark everything up. They'd get frustrated in, high school, university, all of that. And I would get it back, and I would always feel defeated. Like, how am I not getting this? Right? Like this should be easy. Everyone else is doing well. It was my lowest grade, is English. So anyways, I grew up with this mentality of, I'm not a good writer, and I'm kind of dumb. Like, that has been a belief system that I've had. And so one of the things is, when someone tells me I can't do something, I like to prove them wrong most of the time, but that's very outside in, that's not inside out. So I'm an inside out person now. So that doesn't really motivate me anymore. But anyways, about a month or so ago, I was writing my book. I was finishing my book. It's almost, I have to send in my first draft in the next day, actually. And I was in this writer's retreat, and I wrote it, and we had to submit 2 chapters of our book. And I had resistance, and resistance shows up when there's a big breakthrough on the other side. And I talk about this in my book, about resistance, how it shows up and manifests, and how it shows up within ourselves and all of that. And showed up really strong. And at the last hour, Janet, I sent in my 2 chapters for review, like literally the last hour. And a part of it was like the saboteur in me. A part of me was resistance. A part of me was like, the editor's going to tell me this is shit, right? Like but my soul has been telling me I have to get this book out there. So I sent in the 2 chapters. I email it. Part of me kind of wishes it's past the deadline so it doesn't get read. You know what I mean? And, but I was aware that this was a belief system, and I knew it was coming up, but I showed up anyways. And the woman who's done, she's done a ton of books, probably thousands of books. She emailed me back a few days later, and she's like, I hope that I'm not going to disappoint you. This is like how the email started. I hope that I'm not going to disappoint you. But I know I'm supposed to give you constructive feedback, but this is a home run. I absolutely love this, and this. I have absolutely no feedback for you. I can't wait to read your entire book.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I see this, so I'm like, no, this isn't right. So I read it again, and I start crying, because I've never had someone tell me I could do that or would want to read my book or anything like that because of programming. And when I talk about, I mentioned being married, I was in a very emotionally abusive relationship where the person I was with, they're not a bad person, it just wasn't the right dynamic for me. He would call me stupid and put me down all the time. So all of these belief systems on me, right? And so I wanted to share that story with you because if you're listening or watching right now, there's probably something in your life that you feel that you're supposed to do, but all your shit from the past, your programming, things that people have told you who are like, you can never do this or should never do this, or you're dumb, or you have a learning disability or whatever is there. But the resistance is a sign that you must do it. You must do it because it is beyond you. And then also the fact that you've had those blocks and those programmings, you're here to inspire others. But also I do feel like I've had all those experiences because I'm here to transform that into my greatest gifts. And I'm supposed to be a New York Times bestselling author. Not this book, but my next book will be, and I'm almost on my next book. So it's like, what you think you're not good at, what the world has told you from the outside and you suck at, that actually might be your greatest gift. And I encourage you to lean into it because it doesn't make any sense that I'm a writer. It doesn't. And magic doesn't make sense. And so if you have resistance, there's a huge gift on the other side. Show up for it, do it, because this is just one of those examples. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So I have one last question for you.
Absolutely.
How do you want to be remembered when you take your last breath?
Oh, wow. I just did this at a retreat I was facilitating where you're like, write down what you want someone to say at your funeral. How do I want to be remembered? Ooh. So how I want to be remembered is, my Nana, she was the most beautiful human I've ever met. She passed away about 7 years ago, and she was the one person who always understood me. She'd put her arm around me every time I'd see her. She'd bring me in and she'd tell me how big my heart was. And my Nana didn't drive. She's an old Italian woman, had an open door policy at her house. People would be coming in for espresso all the time and cookies. And she lived like a very simple life, but she made a huge impact on people. And so when I think of my Nana, I think of she always left an imprint on everyone's heart that she met, whether it was at the grocery store, on the bus, walking anywhere, like everyone like just could feel her. So how I want to be remembered is, and this is something I've told myself, is I want to leave an imprint on everyone's heart that I meet. And also, I want to be remembered as someone who has helped other people really wake up to who they are and who they're meant to be. And I'm sure there's another huge list of things, but those are the two main pieces: leaving an imprint on everyone's heart and helping them really remember who they are. Yeah.
Wow, that really resonated with me. Wow, that's really deep. Wow. That's also one of my missions. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's
I
cool.
love it. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I know I said darkness to light. I know that's not the title. The title is happiness from within, but that's what you're doing. So this is like, these are the conversations that need to happen, right?
Absolutely. So just really want to thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. It's IamDeidreSirianni.com. We'll drop some links below. And my website is radicallyaligned.com. So yeah, check it out, reach out. I'd love to connect with all of you.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you in the future, maybe on a future episode.
Sounds good.